Welcome back to our time together in our study of the Bible. One problem that I have run across over the years with students of the Bible, and I had this problem somewhat myself, is trying to keep the names that are in the Bible straight, especially since there are so many people in the Bible with the same name. Now, Bible names can be confusing because pronouncing some of those names is a little bit of a challenge. On the other hand, we can tend to learn those names quicker than we would common names because they are so unique. For example, it's not difficult to remember who Methuselah is, even though you probably never met anyone in your lifetime named Methuselah. Actually, in my childhood, I remember an old farmer in the neighborhood who had that first name. And another problem you run into are the familiarity and commonality of some of these names. For example, James, Mary, Judas, John. Which Mary? Which James? Which Judas? Which John are we actually talking about when we read a specific scripture? Now, this study will vary just a little bit from our last study because it's about 50% Bible and 50% history. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's dive in. We're going to start with a name that is in the Bible almost 50 times, but it does not refer to the same man every time. In fact, it refers to over a half a dozen men, and that name is Herod. But first of all, let's look at how Herod came to be. Now, Rome had conquered and ruled a major portion of the world, and eventually everything around the Mediterranean Sea had come under Roman rule. That included the land of Israel and what was once the throne of David. This meant that Rome was stretched out over a vast area. Communication wasn't as simple then as it is now. You couldn't grab a radio or pick up a phone. Messages had to be hand-carried from one place to another, and it was a long way from Rome to Jerusalem. Thus, communication between the 2 points could take months, weeks at absolute best. What Rome needed was a way to keep control over the empire that wasn't tied to strong central control, so that if something happened, it could be handled there locally and not have to relay messages back and forth to decide what you were going to do. One of the ways to do this was by setting into power client kings, or Roman-appointed rulers. Now, the Romans preferred to govern by leaving the local officials in charge of their specific area, and to leave the local laws, customs, and religion intact, if at all possible. As long as things were peaceful, and the Romans got their taxes, homage was paid to the emperor, and nobody had a problem, Rome was happy, and would let the local matters take care of themselves. The first Herod, Herod the Great, was the son of Antipater, who was a high-ranking Roman official. Antipater had made Herod governor of Galilee around 47 BCE. Herod personally enjoyed a good relationship with Julius Caesar and with Mark Antony, and later with Caesar's nephew Octavian, who is better known to us as Augustus Caesar. Now, after the death of Herod's father, there was turmoil in the region that involved Herod's brother, Herod the Great. Things became bad enough that Herod fled to Rome for safety. And there he spent a lot of time in the palace of Caesar and became very closely acquainted with Mark Antony and Octavian. Eventually, with the support of the two men, the Senate was persuaded to install Herod as the king of Judea, basically a client king to rule over that region at Rome's discretion. Mark Antony was dispatched to the region, where he swiftly cleared the region of all non-Roman invaders. And meanwhile, Herod himself, with the aid of a Roman army, led a force that took over control of the city of Jerusalem in 37 BCE. Herod would then begin a long and prosperous 33-year reign as the king of Judea. Herod I, or Herod the Great, was so much in favor with Rome and Augustus Caesar that he wasn't even required to pay Rome any tribute, although he did send generous gifts to the emperor from time to time. Now, Herod was a non-Jew. He accepted the faith as a token to appease the temple. But Herod was known for his cruelty. Typically, he had been trained and educated in Rome, so therefore he was probably more Roman than he was Jewish. And his cruel behavior made a lot of people distrust him and didn't like him. Herod was known for doing a lot of building. He strengthened the defenses of Jerusalem. He erected a harbor city that was named Caesarea, and that name does appear in the Bible. And he expanded the area over which he ruled, and he rebuilt the temple on the Temple Mount. However, his massive building projects burdened the people with heavy taxes, and that didn't help make him any more popular. Nor were the tax collectors who went out and collected that money, as we find out in the New Testament, very popular either. Herod was also very paranoid. He had multiple wives. One of his wives he killed, along with two of his sons, for being unloyal to the throne. They were accused of trying to plot to overthrow him. Then later, a third son, who was named after his grandfather, Antipater, was accused of trying to poison Herod. He too was executed. In the Bible, this is the Herod that ruled over the country when Jesus was born. This was the Herod the wise men went to visit. And this is the Herod that wanted to know the location of Jesus so he could go worship him too. So he said. Of course, we know differently. This is also the Herod that ordered the slaughter of the babies 2 years of age and under. Matthew chapter 2, verses 16 through 17. This is the Herod that caused Joseph to take Mary and the baby to Egypt to avoid Jesus being killed, where they were to remain until Herod the Great, Herod the First, died. Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 through 18. So, Herod the First, or Herod the Great, from a biblical point of view, you can remember for the birth of Jesus, the wise men, and the slaughter of the babies. Herod the Great ruled from around 37 BCE until 4 BCE. Now, following his death, Herod's kingdom was divided by the Romans between Herod's 3 sons. And this is where it gets interesting. Herod Antipas, Herod Archelaus, and Herod Philip. Antipas and Archelaus were full brothers from Herod the Great's Samaritan wife. Herod Philip, sometimes called Herod the Second, was a half-brother from a different mother. The southern part of the kingdom, Judea, was given to Archelaus. The middle part, Galilee, went to Antipas, and the north and eastern parts went to Philip. Now, right now, don't worry about Antipas and Philip. We'll discuss them in our next lesson. Archelaus took over around 4 BCE, after his father's death, and was not around any longer than around 18 AD. He and his other 2 brothers had all been educated in Rome, thus they were very Roman in their thinking. That meant that they quickly responded to any kind of a crisis making sure that everybody clearly understood, you don't do this. And we'll see some of this same thing in Antipas later on. Archelaus had no more taken over than things started to go wrong. Archelaus took ill, and for a while during his sickness and recovery, two popular teachers, one named Matthias and the other named Judas. Now that's not the Matthias that took Judas Iscariot's place as a disciple. And it's not the Judas Iscariot. It's a different Matthias and a different Judas. We'll get to that name later on in our studies. The two men had incited their pupils to take down the golden eagle, which was the symbol of Rome, off the front of the temple. In their minds, it was idolatry, a violation of the Ten Commandments, Exodus chapter 20, verse 4, or Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 8. Archelaus, in response, had the teachers and their pupils burned alive for their seditious act. Then he found himself facing an angry crowd of citizens that demanded rehabilitation of those men as martyrs. The results, troops were moved in to restore peace, resulting in some 3,000 Jews being killed during the celebration of the Passover. That does not build a whole lot of popularity, guys. And for a while afterwards, everything seemed to quiet down, sufficient enough that Archelaus decided he'd finally travel to Rome, where he could officially have himself crowned the king by the emperor. He had been serving in that position officially, but he wasn't coronated yet. All right? In his absence, more riots erupted. And among those leaders was another Judas, a robber named Judas, not Judas Iscariot, or the Judas that had already been burned alive, another Judas, and a royal slave by the name of Simon, not Simon Peter. Now this caused the Romans to have to send in forces to restore peace and control. And this time the Romans swore it would be the last time. So they intended to make a strong example for everyone to remember. The results was some 2,000 people were publicly crucified for the insurrection. On top of the 3,000 already dead, 5,000 totally dead, Archelaus was not a very popular guy. Major complaints were filed against him, resulting in the Romans' faith in him being lost. He was deposed and exiled to Vienna in Gaul, where he would spend the rest of his life. Now, it's in the light of that unrest and the massive amount of deaths that Joseph, Mary, and the baby, returning from Egypt, decided not to go back to Bethlehem, to go farther north into the territory of Antipas in Galilee and settle in the town of Nazareth. Matthew chapter 2, verses 19 through 23. Okay, let's recap. Herod the Great, the birth of Jesus, the wise men, the flight to Egypt. Herod Archelaus, the return of Jesus' family to Israel, and the settling in the district of Galilee and the town of Nazareth to avoid all the turmoil that was happening in Judea, which made Jesus the Nazarene and the man from Galilee. Okay? This is a good place to stop and let you soak in the information. And if you need to play this over again in order to get it straight, please do. Let me mention that my endeavors here are not to give you a complete history of the Herod dynasty. I'm sure serious historians will quickly point out that I left out a few things here and there. Well, volumes of books have been written on this topic, and if you want to get more details, then there's plenty of reading material. Go at it. Enjoy yourself. My intent is to give you basic information that will help you to understand which of the Herods that is being talked about as you read through your Bible. I'm not trying to write a biography of the Herod dynasty. Now, the next time we'll discuss Herod Antipas. In fact, we'll spend that entire lesson on Herod Antipas alone, because he is a key figure in the life and the death of two men, John the Baptizer and Jesus the Christ. Again, if there are any questions or comments, please let me know. My phone is 876-3969. My email is lfc948@yahoo.com, or you can just stop me when you see me and ask. And I hope this lesson has been both interesting and informative. Feel free to pass it on to someone else if you think they could use the information, and feel free to give me feedback as to what you think I could do that would help you out a little bit better to understand what we are saying. Until the next time, may God bless you and keep you, and enjoy it.